Nobody could have guessed what that 12-year-old boy was about to say until he finally spoke. The words that left his mouth stopped veteran TV journalist Sarah Mitchell cold in her tracks. In a single moment, they silenced the entire courtroom and revealed why Judge Frank Caprio is known as one of America's most beloved judges. "Your Honor," the boy whispered, his voice shaking with an emotion sharp enough to cut through the room. "I know I'm supposed to be punished, but I need to tell you something no one else knows." What happened next wasn't just surprising. It was about to challenge everything Sarah Mitchell believed about justice, mercy, and what it truly means to serve the public. Sarah Mitchell had arrived at Providence Municipal Court that Tuesday morning with a clear mission. She wanted to expose Judge Frank Caprio as a soft-hearted pushover who, in her view, was weakening the justice system. As the lead investigative reporter for Channel 12 News, she had built her reputation on hard-hitting exposés that took down corrupt officials and incompetent public servants. Her producer had been direct: capture Caprio letting offenders walk free, show viewers how his emotional approach was making Providence less safe. Sarah agreed without hesitation. She had heard the stories about the Italian-American judge who cried with defendants, paid fines out of his own pocket, and turned his courtroom into what critics mocked as a therapy session. What she didn't know was that she was about to witness something that would shake her entire worldview. The courtroom was crowded that morning. Dozens of people waited for their cases to be called. Parking tickets, minor violations, routine municipal matters. Sarah positioned herself in the back row beside her cameraman, ready to record what she considered another example of judicial weakness. "Next case," the clerk announced. "State versus Marcus Rodriguez. Truancy violation." Sarah's interest sparked immediately. A truancy case was perfect. She expected to see Judge Caprio give a child a light warning wrapped in a sentimental speech about second chances. Her finger hovered over the record button. But as Marcus Rodriguez stepped forward, something in the atmosphere shifted. The boy was small for his age, dressed in a faded red t-shirt and worn jeans. His dark hair was neatly combed, and there was a quiet dignity in the way he stood, something far beyond his years. Judge Caprio glanced down at the file, then back at Marcus. A warm smile appeared briefly, then faded as he absorbed the details. "Marcus," Judge Caprio said gently, "it says here you've missed 47 days of school this semester. That's more than 2 months. Can you tell me what's going on?" Sarah leaned forward, camera ready. This was the moment she had come for. But instead of excuses, the courtroom froze. Marcus looked up, his eyes carrying a depth no child should have. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible, yet every word echoed. "Your Honor, I know you're supposed to punish me, but I need to tell you something no one else knows. I haven't been skipping school because I don't want to learn. I've been taking care of my little sister because my mom is dying, and we don't have anyone else." Silence fell like a weight. Sarah's finger stopped midair. The court reporter froze. Even the bailiff turned to look. Judge Caprio didn't interrupt. He leaned forward, removed his glasses, and focused completely on Marcus, not as a defendant, but as a child asking for help. "Tell me about your mom," Judge Caprio said softly, "and tell me about your sister." Marcus took a breath, his voice growing steadier with each word. His mother had cancer. The doctors said she didn't have much time. His sister Emma was only 6. On bad days, Marcus was the only one there. He made breakfast, walked Emma to school when he could, and stayed home to watch his mother, in case she needed to go to the hospital. For the first time in years, Sarah Mitchell felt her professional cynicism crack. This wasn't the story she came to tell. Judge Caprio stood up, something longtime court staff said he rarely did. He stepped down from the bench, removed his robe, and stood face to face with Marcus, not as a judge, but as a man speaking to a boy forced to grow up too soon. "Marcus," he said, his voice heavy with emotion, "how long has it been since you've been able to just be a kid?" The question lingered in the air, challenging everyone in the room. Marcus paused, thinking. Then Marcus said something that would later be quoted in newspapers across the country. "I don't remember, Your Honor," he said softly. "But that's okay. Emma still gets to be a kid, and that's what matters." In that moment, it became clear why what happened next would restore faith in humanity and remind everyone that real leadership isn't about blindly enforcing rules. It's about knowing when compassion matters more. Sarah Mitchell had covered wars, political scandals, and corporate corruption. She had interviewed presidents and exposed powerful officials. But sitting in that courtroom, listening to a 12-year-old explain how he gave up his childhood to keep his family together, she realized she was witnessing something more powerful than any investigation she had ever produced. She was watching true leadership. Judge Caprio studied Marcus for a long moment, then turned to the packed courtroom. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice steady with hard-earned wisdom. "I want everyone here to understand what we are witnessing. This young man has shown more responsibility, more courage, and more love than most adults show in a lifetime." He looked back at Marcus. "Son, what you've been doing isn't just admirable. It's heroic. But you're 12 years old. While you're busy taking care of everyone else, who's taking care of you?" Marcus shrugged a small, painfully childlike motion that made several people in the gallery wipe their eyes. "I take care of myself, Your Honor. I'm pretty good at it now." That was the moment Sarah Mitchell understood how wrong she had been about Judge Caprio. Instead of ending the case with a lecture or simply dismissing it, he asked a question that separated true leaders from people who merely follow rules. "Marcus," he asked gently, "what do you need?" The simplicity of the question was revolutionary. Not what did you do wrong, not how should you be punished, but what do you need? Marcus looked confused. I don't understand, Your Honor. It's simple, son," Judge Caprio said. "If you could do anything right now to help your family, what would it be?" For the first time since he walked into the courtroom, Marcus looked like the child he truly was. His composure broke, and tears rolled down his face. "I just want my mom to stop hurting," he whispered. "And I want Emma to stay in school and not worry about anything. And maybe I could go back to school too, if there was someone who could help watch my mom during the day." Sarah realized tears were streaming down her own face. She wasn't alone. The bailiff wiped his eyes. The court reporter stopped typing, staring at Marcus in open admiration. Even the other defendants waiting for their cases understood they were witnessing something extraordinary. But Judge Caprio wasn't finished. "Marcus," he said, "I'm going to do something I've never done in 30 years on this bench. I'm going to recess this court for 15 minutes, and I'm going to make some phone calls. When we come back, we're going to solve this problem together." As Judge Caprio disappeared into his chambers, Sarah felt a crisis of conscience. She had come to expose a judge she believed was weakening the justice system. Instead, she was watching a man use his authority not to punish, but to heal. She thought about the headline she had planned. "Judge lets offenders walk free." Looking at Marcus, now surrounded by court staff who had left their posts just to comfort him, Sarah knew how wrong that story would be. This wasn't about letting people off. This was about understanding that sometimes the people who end up in court aren't criminals. They're heroes pushed beyond their limits by circumstances they never chose. When Judge Caprio returned 15 minutes later, a warm smile lit up the courtroom. Sarah would later learn that in those 15 minutes, he had contacted social services, arranged home health care for Marcus's mother, enrolled Marcus and Emma in family assistance programs, and personally guaranteed educational support through his own charitable foundation. "Marcus," Judge Caprio announced, "effective immediately, a home health aide will be with your mother every weekday from 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. That means you can return to school full-time. Your sister Emma will be enrolled in an after-school program with tutoring and meals, and your family will receive grocery and utility assistance until your mother's situation stabilizes." The courtroom burst into applause, but Judge Caprio raised his hand, restoring silence. "I'm not finished," he said, his voice carrying the weight of a lifetime spent on the bench. "Marcus, I want you to understand this. What you've done for your family is remarkable, but you're still a child, and children deserve the chance to be children. The state failed you by not recognizing your struggle sooner. The school system failed you by not asking why you disappeared. But today, those failures end." He met Marcus's eyes, his tone softening, yet growing even more powerful. "What you showed us here today, the way you put your family first, the sacrifices you made for the people you love, the burdens you carried that no child should ever have to bear, that is the truest form of leadership. You will grow into an extraordinary man, because you already are an extraordinary young one." What happened next made Sarah Mitchell realize she wasn't just witnessing a powerful story for the news. She was watching something that would forever change how she understood justice. Marcus looked up at Judge Caprio with pure gratitude. Then he asked a question that brought the entire courtroom to its feet. "Thank you, Your Honor. But may I ask you something?" "Of course, son. There are other kids like me, aren't there?" Marcus said. "Kids who miss school because they're taking care of their families. Can we help them too?" The question struck the room like a bolt of lightning. A 12-year-old boy just offered hope for his own family, was already thinking about others. Judge Caprio studied Marcus for a long moment, then slowly smiled, not the familiar gentle smile, but something deeper, something resolute. "Marcus," he said, "I've been a judge for 30 years. I've seen thousands of cases and made thousands of decisions. I thought I understood justice. But today, you taught me something I never learned in law school." Turning to the courtroom, his voice carried far beyond its walls. Justice isn't only about punishment. It isn't about rigidly following rules. True justice means understanding that behind every case is a human being, and behind every human being is a story that deserves to be heard. He looked back at Marcus. "And to answer your question, yes. We are going to help other children like you. Starting today, this court will establish a family crisis intervention program. Any child missing school due to family emergencies will be connected with support services, not punished." The applause that followed was unlike anything the courtroom had ever known. It wasn't just appreciation, it was recognition. Everyone understood they had witnessed something that rose beyond the law and touched the core of human compassion. Like this video and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that humanity still lives within our institutions. Comment below and tell us about a moment when someone showed you unexpected kindness. Sarah Mitchell stood at the back of the courtroom, her camera forgotten, as Judge Caprio formally dismissed the charges against Marcus and scheduled a follow up hearing to ensure the support services were working as promised. As the session ended and people began to leave, Sarah approached the judge. She had planned to confront him with tough questions about being soft on crime. Instead, she asked something entirely different. "Judge Caprio," she said, "I'm Sarah Mitchell from Channel 12 News. I came here expecting a story about a judge who was too lenient. What I found was something else entirely. How did you know this boy needed help instead of punishment?" Judge Caprio looked at her with the kind eyes that had become famous around the world. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, "I learned long ago that my job isn't to judge people, it's to help them. When someone ends up in my courtroom, it's usually because something in their life has gone wrong. Sometimes they've made bad choices. Sometimes bad choices were made for them. My job is to know the difference and to respond with justice." He gestured toward Marcus, now surrounded by court staff who had grown deeply invested in his story. That young man didn't make reckless choices. He was forced to make impossible decisions in an impossible situation, and he faced them with more wisdom, courage, and selflessness than most adults ever show. He doesn't need punishment. He needs support. And more than anything, he needs to know that there are adults in this world willing to stand up for children when children are forced to stand up for themselves. Sarah nodded, feeling her entire understanding of justice begin to shift. "Judge," she asked, "what made you choose municipal court? You could have aimed for higher courts, more prestigious positions." Judge Caprio smiled. "Ms. Mitchell, municipal court is where real people with real problems come on the worst days of their lives. This is where justice truly happens, not in appellate courts or Supreme Courts, but right here, where a single decision can mean the difference between a family holding together or falling apart." He gestured toward the bench where he had spent 3 decades. "Everyone who stands before this bench is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's hope for a better future. When I put on these robes, I'm not just becoming a judge. I'm accepting the responsibility to treat every person with the same dignity and compassion I would want for my own family." As Sarah prepared to leave, she realized the story she would tell was nothing like the one she had planned. Instead of exposing a weak judge, she would share the story of a leader who understood that true strength can look like kindness, and that real justice sometimes means bending the rules to serve a higher purpose. 3 months later, Sarah Mitchell won a Peabody Award for her documentary on Judge Caprio's Family Crisis Intervention Program, which helped more than 200 families in its first year. More importantly, She had learned the difference between leadership and authority, justice and punishment, and following rules versus serving people. As for Marcus Rodriguez, he returned to school full-time and became an honor student. His mother's condition stabilized with the help of home health care, and his sister Emma flourished in the after-school program. Most remarkably, Marcus began volunteering with the court's Family Assistance Program, helping identify other children facing the same hidden struggles he once carried alone. When asked why he wanted to help others now that his own family was safe, Marcus answered simply, "Judge Caprio taught me that when someone helps you, the best way to say thank you is to help someone else." That's what leaders do. They use their strength to make others stronger. Subscribe and share this story, because in a world that often feels divided, Judge Frank Caprio proves that compassion and wisdom can still overcome cynicism and rigid rules. The story of Marcus Rodriguez and Judge Frank Caprio became more than a viral clip or a feel-good headline. It became a reminder that in courtrooms across America, there are judges who understand their greatest responsibility isn't to law books or bureaucracy, but to the people standing before them, seeking not just justice, but hope. And sometimes, when a 12-year-old boy has the courage to tell the truth about an impossible situation, it takes a judge with the wisdom to ask, "What do you need?" instead of, "What did you do wrong?" To remind us what real leadership truly looks like. In a justice system often criticized for being cold and impersonal, Judge Frank Caprio continues to prove that the most powerful tool any leader can wield is not authority, but empathy. And in Marcus Rodriguez, he didn't just see a case to resolve, he saw a young leader whose example would inspire a more human approach to justice. Because some of the most important lessons about leadership don't come from law schools or textbooks. Sometimes they come from a 12-year-old boy who understands that real strength means taking care of the people you love, even when the world expects you to look out only for yourself. And sometimes they come from a judge who knows that real justice isn't about punishment. It's about giving people the support they need to become the best versions of themselves. Years later, when Marcus Rodriguez graduated as valedictorian of his high school class and was accepted to Harvard Law School on a full scholarship, he returned to Judge Caprio's courtroom one final time.